So UFC and Dana White have gotten into bed with Bud Light. A lot of people are upset, and rightly so. We're going to try answer and ask as many questions as we can surrounding this story in this little video. And you can understand why people have their nose out of joint. This article that I've got pulled up here, Republican UFC fans cancel Fight Pass subscription amid new Bud Light sponsorship. What will Dana White say about the reaction from UFC fans amid this renewed sponsorship? It's a very interesting one, right? We understand that Bud Light was the first beer to sponsor UFC, so there's already a relationship between this company and Dana White. It does beg the question why. A lot of people are saying this is about money, and Dana White came out and blasted everyone and said, of course a sponsorship is about money, but it wasn't just about money. So he's reasoning behind this move, because beforehand I was just thinking, Bud Light, you're going in with these people that promote mental illness and have done for the last year and have felt the repercussions of that exact ideology and mentality. People boycotted it. People have no interest in that sort of garbage. These are echo chamber people from Twitter that think this is a good idea. Even if we go all the way back and we see how the coping mechanism between the PR people and the executive people in this company during this outlandish decision to put Dylan Mulvaney on the front of one of their cans just sparked this crazy outrage. People boycotted it. The losses were insane that this company endured. Obviously, that's why they've gone to Dana White to try regain some credence, some respect, because they know that the people that follow MMA and follow UFC, that there's a built-in hardcore set of patriotic people that don't want to play the game of mental illness. They don't want to play the game of teaching your children in public school about all this garbage that they were endorsing here. So if we go back to this lunatic here, she put a mentally ill man who dresses up as a woman on the front of their can and on the front of their beer and pretty much told everyone that that's what you want. She didn't ask. She assumed, because these people live in woke Twitter bubbles. She assumed because everyone has pronouns in their bio that that's what everyone wanted. But she obviously didn't read the room, because people who drink a beer after a hard week at work or a hard days at work, they don't want to be engaging in this mental illness. The world is so crazy. Why would you want this on your beer? Why would you want this sort of mental affliction coming into your everyday life? You wouldn't. That's why so many people push back this garbage, this progressive junk. Let's have a little listen.
Woman, I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. And it was, this brand is in decline. It's been in decline for a really long time. And if we do not attract young drinkers to come and drink this brand, there will be no future for Bud Light. So I had this super clear mandate. It's like we need to evolve. And
I'm just going to stop it there. She had a super clear mandate that was to attract young drinkers. Okay, so you can already tell, as with every facet of society, that they go after the young people. If you look at Disney and the absolute shocking behavior that they have injected, this identity politics, this cultural Marxism into Star Wars, into Marvel, disgusting. And the fans are turning off in droves. How could you not read the room? How could you not have seen that this was going to happen?
And what I brought to that was a belief in, okay, what does evolve and elevate mean? It means inclusivity. It means shifting the tone. It means having a campaign that's truly inclusive and feels lighter and brighter and different and appeals to women and to men. And representation is at sort of the heart of everything.
Let me flick off of this, because you can't really look at the face right here. You can see this right here. Absolute nut job. These are these progressive nut jobs that want to get to your kids. Remember that. Remember that when people say, why are people so bent out of shape because Dana is signing with Bud Light? It's because parents don't want to be affiliated with mental cases like her. Anyhow, let's go back over here for a second. And we're going to listen to what Dana has to say and what his reasoning was behind it. But my point there was, when you hear the word inclusivity, when you hear the word representation, you know you got to turn and run the opposite way. You know you're headed down a dark path. First of all, you're going to be broke real quick, because the consensus and the majority of the populace out there don't care about representation and don't care about inclusivity. They just want normality. And don't come at me with questions like, what does normal mean? Look at Dylan Mulvaney and tell me if that's normal. Okay? That's all I'm going to say there. But let's see what Dana's reasoning was behind getting back into bed with Bud Light.
Well, first of all, let me start with, they were the first beer company that we really did business with. They're our first real big sponsor when we were getting started, and now we're back with them. And going into this deal, I know all the controversy and everything else, but for myself, going into a long-term deal with another sponsor, I want to be with somebody that I'm actually aligned with. And I know people were upset with what they did, but I'm looking at all the good things that they do. You know, they employ 65,000 Americans. They have thousands of vets that work for them. They spend $700 million a year with U.S. farmers using their crops to make their products, and many, many other great things that Anheuser-Busch has done in this country.
A very interesting take, a very diplomatic take, very well said. I see a lot of people online saying that this was scripted, that Dana White was reading off a script because it's damage control, right? You know, he's putting the UFC into the realm of Dylan Mulvaney. That's not a good look for the UFC. But everything that I do on this channel when I'm aiming my ire and my anger at the UFC, it's not necessarily always at Dana White. Of course, there's always questions to be asked, especially about decision making when it comes to bouts and things like that. But when we're looking at the bigger picture, so when I mention in videos that the UFC love to align themselves with nail varnish, Black Lives Matter and all that sort of garbage, it's not necessarily Dana White that I'm talking about, because people come back in the videos and in the comments and they say, what are you talking about, man? Dana White isn't interested in all that stuff. I never said that he was. But I said is the organization would love to have that as the face of them. If you think about how big Budweiser is and Bud Light is, they still made a crazy decision to put an executive PR person in a position where they could go woke and ultimately get broke. That's what happened there. Hopefully Dana can keep pulling the strings until he can't at UFC. And when he can't, let me tell you straight, you will see a deviation in this garbage. That's what I mean when I say that they love to have representation and inclusivity in their champions. It's probably coming from above Dana White's head, and he's just about balancing the books. We've seen him. He's not interested in banning flags. He totally doesn't want it. The call has been made from above. It's not coming from Dana White. Because like if we jump over here, you see the Bud Light executives put on leave after Dylan Mulvaney uproar, reporter says. And a lot of these are mainstream articles. They're coming from like legitimate CBS News. So they can't actually hide it or gaslight us into thinking that this was a pejorative aimed at a certain group of mentally ill people. They just have to report on the facts. And the facts were that people didn't want to affiliate with mentally ill people who are clearly insane and within some sort of progressive utopia that doesn't exist. And they pushed back and they got an end to it. Bud Light's executive was put on leave. Lost your job, off you go. I don't believe that person's even back at work yet. So that brings us back here and we have to ask the question, and I'm going to put it to you. Let me know in the comments down below. Should UFC fans be cancelling subscriptions amid this Bud Light sponsorship? Or do we give Dana the benefit of the doubt here? You know what he did during C19, the sickness that we're not even allowed to mention on this channel. This week actually I've had 2 shots taken at this channel. I've had 2 videos age restricted and I had 2 videos demonetized. I appealed all 4 of them and actually got the decision turned over. So there definitely is freaks out there that are reporting me en masse to get these sort of community guideline strikes going. And as I said, I do have a hard strike on this channel for talking about the sickness of the last couple of years, so I got to be careful in what I say. So do me a favor, actually, if you can, see, can you pop over there to the Rumble channel? I think there's like 250 or 280 subscribers. If I could boost that, at least you'd know then if you get cut from here, you have a little bit of an audience built in. Every little helps. And also, if you can, share out the video and do me that little bit of a favor. But what I'll say to you is, in terms of the Dana White stuff, we saw what he did during that sickness. You know, it was groundbreaking. He was the only guy that was running a business during that. He was the only guy running sport. And fair play to him. Are we going to offer Dana White our support for the decision that he made with the Bud Light sponsorship? Because if you look at it, right, as I said, echo chambers and bubbles in the real world, when you don't scan all day on Twitter and Instagram and all these other garbage sites, when you don't do that, you're out in the real world, you're working. People are going to the construction site, people are going to factories, people are going doing their mechanics work. They're not talking about pronouns. They're not talking about blue-haired freaks. They're not talking about what happened with Bud Light. So when they go for their beers in the aftermath, they don't want to see that. And that's why the boycott happened. And that's why it got pushed back. That's why it was repelled. And obviously we have the owners of such a huge corporation like Bud Light or Budweiser or even the UFC. They've got to balance the books right now. They've brought in Dana White. Are we going to give him the benefit of the doubt? And hopefully he can turn the ship around from them and add a little bit more patriotic charisma to what was destroyed for the last year. I don't know. I'm kind of the mind that I'm going to give him a chance. I know I'm harsh on Dana White all the time, but I think I'm going to give him a chance here. I think I'm going to trust him because we've seen what he's done in the past. We've seen how he's grown the UFC from this tiny thing to this humongous corporation. So for the time being, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and support that decision. I'm not going to drink Bud Light because I don't drink alcohol, full stop. Let me know your thoughts down below. If any of this made sense, maybe like the video, subscribe and share. I appreciate you. Cheers.